Hey there, this is Natalie, and after my last Attack on Titan ending theories video looked at the various ideas that could support Eren still being alive in chapter 139, in this one, I'm going to look at another aspect of the ending that there are lots of different opinions about, and that is who the father of Historia's baby is. Now, I'm going to be considering both possibilities here, Eren being the father and farmer-kun being the father, but I'd like to begin by saying two things about this. Firstly, I do personally think it's Eren, but secondly, I do still think there's a chance it isn't, and so I don't agree with a lot of the people who think that it's Eren, who say that this is 100% guaranteed, and anyone who even entertains the idea that it could be the farmer isn't paying attention. This comes down to what I think the point of this even being left unanswered until now actually is. Isayama doesn't go out of his way to make questions of identity especially difficult to guess or figure out in Attack on Titan, if it isn't natural for them to be that way. He didn't put in spare characters or red herrings that would make it harder for the audience to work out that Annie was the female Titan, or that Bertholt and Reiner were the other Titan shifters, or that the wounded soldier Falco was visiting was Eren. His style is more that the consequences of a revelation and the way it changes the story are what's important, not the shock of the revelation itself. Red herrings are a tool used by mystery writers, and while some other prominent Japanese writers do use mystery-style techniques in fantasy stories, for instance Tape Nagatsuki in Re:Zero, Kaiju Shirai in The Promised Neverland, and even, actually, Reki Kawahara in Sword Art Online, Isayama's style, at least with Attack on Titan, has not been to work like a mystery writer. We know he can write amazing revelations from the basement, which changed everything we thought we knew about the setting. But again, he didn't try to mislead us intentionally with red herrings like a mystery writer would there. He just made the truth inaccessible until it was time for the truth to, again, change the story. This idea of changes and twists being at the heart of the climactic points in stories ties into the most common story structure used in manga and in Japanese fiction in general, which is called kishotenketsu. I won't go into that too much here because this is still an Attack on Titan theory video, not some weird lecture about fiction writing. But basically, where Western fiction usually focuses on conflict and conflict resolution for its climactic moments, with a kishotenketsu story structure, while conflicts and conflict resolution may well be happening, it's the twists and changes that come about that form the peaks in the story structure. Story structure is something people tend to understand on an intuitive level, just from being surrounded by stories. And so what's interesting is that Western people who predominantly consume Japanese fiction for a few years will actually tend towards using kishotenketsu story structures rather than typical Western ones if they write stories themselves, even if they've never heard of it or even been consciously aware that there were differences. And naturally, it is the story structure Japanese writers tend to intuitively write, if they're not trying to do something else intentionally. And so this is probably the natural way to develop stories for Isayama. What all of this means, in my opinion, is that what's going to matter about the answer to this is how the answer changes things at the end of the story, not the conclusion of the mystery of who the dad is. As a reveal in and of itself, Isayama probably expects that to the audience, finding out who the father is going to be underwhelming either way. If it's Eren, then it's what we were expecting all along. And if it's the farmer, it's a rando who we have no investment in. So it's not like he's going to be considering this to be one of the big impact surprises of the final chapter. So if he doesn't tend to create red herrings and mysteries just for the sake of mysteries being entertaining, and if the reveal isn't going to be a thrilling one in itself anyway, particularly compared to whatever else is going to happen in the end, why did he leave it until the final chapter? Well, because the answer will be crucial to the changes that the world will be left with at the end of the story. Historia is important to the future of Paradis, whatever happens with Ymir and Titan shifter powers, and whatever Eren's status is at the end of the story, because she's the queen, and she'll be key to how the surviving population of the island recover from these events and move forward. We can consider everybody else's role in creating whatever this future will be to be over once the story ends, but that's not the case with Historia. Whether royal blood means anything at all in supernatural, Titan-related terms at the end of all of this, in social and political terms, it still will. And Historia and her descendants will be expected to rule. So, if the baby is revealed to be the child of the queen and a nobody, her baby would represent a changing world where Eren's influence was no longer present. The baby wasn't part of any plan he had, other than the plan just to keep her from being forced to inherit the Beast Titan straight away. Historia will be ruling as she sees fit, never having been informed of Eren's plans, and never having been included in them, beyond him including ways to protect her. But if Eren is the father, the more likely outcome, just based on the amount of evidence supporting it, where there's none really supporting the farmer, beyond just that being the answer she gave officially, then it's likely that Historia is not just being protected by Eren's plan, but is instead a big part of it. This would mean Eren's plans always extended beyond safeguarding Paradis and then handing its future over to Historia. There are other interesting implications to Eren being the father, which may or may not come up too, like whether the physical contact necessary for him to knock her up would have caused Eren to experience memories and visions from the Attack Titan that may have informed his decisions, and also just what his feelings for Historia versus Mikasa ever were. I think it's possible that Eren just never really saw romantic love as being a possibility for him, with all the other stuff he had going on, and so where he cared about both Historia and Mikasa, he never really saw it necessary to choose between them, given he wouldn't be having a future with anybody anyway. This would mean he could have been sincere, both in wanting to be the father of Historia's baby and in the various moments that supported him loving Mikasa. But it's also possible that he did make a choice, and will end up with one of them. And naturally, if Eren's the father of Historia's baby, then that would make her the more likely one. So farmer-kun being the father may also be connected to an ending where Eren survives and ends up building a life with Mikasa, which I think is unlikely, but still within the realms of possibility. The resolution of who the father is will probably also pair with the resolution of who the baby is. If it's a normal baby, just representing the free Eldians of the future, and that a child born on Paradis at the end of this story will have a much more hopeful future than a child born at the beginning, then the rando father option is more likely than if the baby fits with just about any other theory, such as that there will be Ymir reborn, or Eren reborn, or the culmination of some plan involving the baby inheriting Titan shifter abilities from Zeke and or Eren at birth. So those are my thoughts on who the father of Historia's baby is, and on this plotline in general. I do think it's Eren, but that's because I'm more persuaded by theories where Historia's baby has always been part of some bigger plan. But if Historia's baby is just intended to be symbolic of the future of Paradis when all of this is over, then I can still see farmer-kun being the father, and so I still don't think it makes sense to rule that out. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and as always, please subscribe for more Attack on Titan ending coverage, as well as for analysis and theories for other series, including ReZero. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.